Hi friends, welcome back to Building in a Small Town. My guest today is me. I have a pretty big update for you, as well as a recap of the craziness that was the beginning of 2024, how the 4th annual Deadlift competition went last weekend, and whatever else I decide to ramble on about. This one is probably going to be pretty short and sweet, as it is tough for me to talk to myself out loud anyways. I'm in my own head all day long, but I promise I'll try to keep it as short and concise as possible. Before we get into the episode, I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you for listening and ask you to make sure that you're subscribed on whatever your listening platform. While you're at it, if you could also drop a quick rating and review, that's a simple, free way to support the show, and it helps others find the show. Thank you again, and let's get into it. Welcome to Building in a Small Town, where we're talking to entrepreneurs, community leaders, policymakers, and more to find out how they're building things in small towns. I'm your host, Shelby Smith. Well, hello. It is very difficult for me to believe that half of 2024 is already in the books and is already gone. 2 quarters in, 1 half in, whatever way you want to look at it. I don't know about you, but for me, this year is just absolutely freaking flying by. I think that's good for the most part, but I don't know. Some days it just feels like blink and we're missing it kind of a thing. But I have been needing to sit down and record this episode, this podcast, this update for quite some time. But I'd been putting it off. I thought July 1st would be a good time to announce it, good time to release it, good time to all of the things. And it just so happened and worked out that I had a podcast episode releasing on July 1st. So I thought, let's just get it all out of the way on the July 1st episode. I also didn't have any other episodes like pre-recorded. And this week was very much a recovery week post deadlift competition and all of the chaos that goes into that and results from that in trying to pull off some sort of an event like the deadlift competition. So I think I probably should just start from the beginning of the year, early 2024, beginning of this podcast, really, to give you a little bit of a insight into, what the first half of this year has looked like, and then potentially where the second half of the year is going to be going for me. So this podcast, I don't remember if I talked about it in the first episode. Man, I need to go back and listen to that. So this podcast I launched the very beginning of 2024. I'm pretty sure that I recorded my intro and maybe my first episode the last day of December of 2023. And with the intention of having one podcast a week. My goal for the year was to release 50 episodes. So that would give me, a couple weeks of maybe not having an episode and still being able to hit that goal. But if I back up a little bit earlier than that, can't remember if it was October or November of 2023, I got a message on LinkedIn from I would call him a casting scout, a casting agent. I don't really know what to call them. Was reached out by a casting person via LinkedIn about season 2 of Gordon Ramsay's Food Stars. I went through casting for season 1 of Gordon Ramsay Food Stars and was cut 8 days before we were set to leave. So up until 8 days until filming was to begin, which was supposed to be for 10 weeks, I was scrambling. This would have been 2022, I think. It seems like. It's hard to think back at this point. But so it seems like it was 2022. I had gone through the whole process, was like kind of confident at that point that they were going to take me. And then 8 days before set to leave, told I did not make it. I was a little bitter. I had attempted to put a lot of pieces in place to be able to be gone for 10 weeks. In retrospect, totally was not ready. Would have been disastrous if that would have been the case, but it all works out. So they ended up filming that, like I said, early 2022, and that did not release until May of 2023, I think is when the show premiered. So when they reached back out for season 2 in the fall, I was a little skeptical, but I was like, whatever, I've been through it. I had saved all of my application stuff in a Word document, so I didn't have to write out, pages and pages of things again, which made it a little less strenuous, shall we say. But so I agreed to go through the process again. And so going into early 2024, I had no idea if I was going still. They kept asking me for stuff. So I kept preparing as if I was going to be gone. I taught one of Willie's employees how to take care of the crickets so that those would be taken care of while I was gone. Thankfully I was down to like not doing markets. Most of my wholesale accounts, like I could have conversations with them of, hey, you need to get stocked up by this date, and then understand that, between these weeks and these weeks, restock is just not going to be possible. And so I was able to do that. My online store had been shut down for a pretty good period of time, so that wasn't a big deal. So it was, timing wise, it worked out a lot better than season 1 would have. All of that being said, we moved into 214 Maine, end of 2023 in October. We got married in December. And then like going into January, they had told us schedule wise that filming would be from the end of February until early April. So it would be 7 weeks this time versus 10. I assume they learned some things in season 1 that made them more efficient. But that the entirety of the filming was going to be in the UK, which was going to, present its own interesting wrinkle challenge. So like I said, continued on that process. Meanwhile, I had this itch to start this podcast, and I definitely wanted to be consistent. I wanted to have an episode out every week. So I launched this podcast, remember, very end of 2023, and very beginning of 24 would have been my first interview episodes coming out. And I knew that I would be potentially leaving for 7 weeks at the end of February. So from the beginning of January till the end of February, I proceeded to record 17, 18 episodes and get them edited and uploaded. And if you've been following along from the beginning, you know I was doing an excessive amount of like clips of all of those episodes because, of course, why not? So it was a pretty intense podcasting boot camp, if you will. Yeah, it was a lot in retrospect. I don't know what I was thinking, but whatever. I got it done. So I ended up getting the call. Gosh, when was it? Maybe beginning of February, to leave end of February, to say that, hey, you are coming to London. I think they said the UK at that time. I don't think they had told us it was London yet. You are coming to the UK to go through the final audition for Gordon Ramsay's Food Stars Season 2. At this point, I'm thinking they're not going to fly me all the way over to London to cut me, like this is going to be, I'm going to get on this show. How wild is that? So like I said, I record all these podcast episodes. I pack for 7 weeks, get enough clothing that are not leggings and t-shirts and everything else that I'd been living in for the last 6 years, packed into suitcases, sorted out, packed up, ready to go. And I left for London that very last week of February. I want to say it was like the 26th or 27th, got on a plane, arrived in London. We had 3 or 4 days of like meetings and stuff before any sort of filming started. And it was a final audition. We were not casted yet. They brought 26 of us in from across the US, all sorts of different businesses, all food related in one way or another. And they cut it down to 14. And in case you did not watch episode 1, which premiered on May 22nd, and you can go back and watch it on Hulu if you want, they cut me. So I was not one of the 14 selected. I met some really cool people that I've stayed in touch with, and it was a free trip to London, and it was one of the top 5 weirdest experiences of my life. I got to see how the sausage was made in reality television, which was its own experience and its own treat, if you will. And I kind of characterize it to people of, I don't regret it, but I don't think I would do it again, if that tells you how it went. Let's just say that I certainly was not a great fit for reality television. I'm generally pretty even-keeled, not very good at, I'm pretty even-keeled. I'm pretty, what you see is what you get. And I don't think that, in the eyes of the producers, for sure, it did not translate into what they thought would make a good cast member. So, which is fine. Like, it all works out. So I, like I said, had packed for 7 weeks. I suppose I should say 2. So first season was just Gordon Ramsay. Second season was more of a team format. So it was Gordon Ramsay and Lisa Vanderpump. If you don't know who Lisa Vanderpump is, she got famous through Real Housewives of LA. And then I guess she like owns a bunch of restaurants and stuff on the West Coast, but like very steeped in the reality TV world. I think the Vanderpump name is most famous for Vanderpump Rules, which I've heard is very dramatic, but mainly focuses on her kids. So she's not necessarily a part of that show. I've never watched an episode of it in my life. I've only watched episode 1 of season 2 of Food Stars, so I don't know if it's any good. I know who's been sent home because, like I said, I'm connected with all of these people. So I know who got sent home on the episodes. I don't know who won. I can't spoiler alert for you. But yeah, it was quite a strange experience. Quite a strange experience. Like I said, I don't regret it, but I don't know that I would do it again. So packed for 7 weeks, was home by March the 8th, maybe March the 9th. So I think I ended up going for 10 days. And then I just kind of laid pretty low for a little while after that. I had to go take care of crickets and do all that kind of stuff. But in general, I was just not gonna, I had prepared everyone for me to be gone for 7 weeks. So I felt like I could just disappear a little bit for 7 weeks, and that just kind of worked out. It was very mental and emotional roller coaster, shall we say. But so before I got on that plane to go audition for Gordon Ramsay, Willie and I had already talked about, I had been feeling like it was time to be done with the crickets for quite some time at that point. The grind of cricket farming is a very real thing. So it was to the point where demand was such that I needed to make a decision on whether I was going to expand or not. If I expanded, I needed to have adequate amounts of labor to be able to do that. I was completely tapped out, probably above my limit of things that I could do on my own in terms of scale. So expansion needed to happen. And so we're trying to figure out if it was worth, investing the money to expand in a larger cricket barn. But the other question was I going to be able to have reliable labor to take care of those crickets? Realistically, cricket farming, not super fun, not great conditions, not somewhere that would necessarily be easy to recruit people to work in those conditions. So I was not confident in that. I was entirely over the argument of I'm forcing people to eat bugs. The conspiracy theory thing had reared its head and gotten worse, from 2020 on, essentially. And I always say it was just people on the internet for quite some time, and it was until I think it was 2022. I started having people show up at markets to yell at me. That wasn't very cool. And then most recently, beginning of the year, the Iowa Senate passed a ban on insect protein, lab grown meat, all sorts of different stuff. And like I said, insect protein was on that list. Passed that ban in government institutions. So my own state doesn't necessarily, want any innovation or effort or anything, which that's an entirely different conversation. But it's all those things culminated in me. This was never my life's calling. I never grew up dreaming of being a cricket farmer or anything like that. This is just an opportunity that I said, I'm going to run with this and see how far it goes. And man, it went further than I ever could have thought. But it had started to feel like it was time to move on. So Willie and I had decided that when I got back from Gordon Ramsay, I was going to set an end date for when I was done. And so I got back earlier than I thought, which was fine. And straight back into the barn, straight back into the grind, essentially. And at that point, I think maybe a week after, or maybe it was on the plane, I don't even remember, I decided that July 1st was my last day of raising crickets. And so I thought that I was just going to keep raising crickets until July 1st. I only made it one more round until I was just really done. I hatched another set of babies after I got back and then let them grow out. And so I harvested my last crickets, I think the second week of May was when I officially shut everything off in the cricket barn. So, just moved the chair. So raised my final crickets in May, and let my wholesale and white label partners know what was going on, and started looking for a solution for, in particular, my white label relationships to continue on. So I am working with another farm to take over that white label relationship and potentially some other things. So it's kind of cool to be able to build something, that has enough value to be able to sell to another company. I think that, that was, like I said, this was never meant to be my lifelong thing. So if it's never going to be your lifelong thing, you better have an exit strategy. So kind of neat that I was able to get that done. But in the meantime, I do have some crickets left that are being processed into the white label orders. So I will probably put up the very small amount of remaining inventory that I have on my email list. So and get that sold that way. But so on my side, the Jiminy Cricket side, there are no more crickets, or very, very few. But on the Tricky Cricky Amazon side, you can still get those. Those are still available. I just finished up the last big order for them this past week, so that's shipping tomorrow. And then I have one more small-ish order to get out the door and send their way, hopefully before the middle of July. So at that point, then I can be just done. It's time to be done. I like I said, I had intended to raise crickets up until essentially now, but it just, Willie was getting really busy with the landscaping. I was just really over it. So it just seemed like, why am I going to prolong this any longer? Like, let's just rip the Band-Aid off. So yeah, I'm not the cricket lady anymore, or I will always be the cricket lady in some people's eyes. But I am now moved on from the crickets. You might ask, what am I going to do next? And my honest answer is I'm not entirely certain. I've helped Willie a lot this summer. Took over doing like his plants and all that kind of stuff. I love plants, in case you didn't know. I have probably over 30 at this point, house plants. It's excessive, but there's always more room for plants. But so outdoor plants and, landscape design and all that kind of stuff, I actually really enjoy. And it's something that he really does not like doing, but people want it. So it's been a pretty easy step in for me on that. And then I just, I help him haul stuff from one job site to the other. Things like that. I take care of all of his books, take care of payroll, take care of bills. Basically all the things that he doesn't want to do, I'm fine with doing. So I've been doing that while I worked through, like I said, that last cricket order. There's that. I have been flipping furniture a little bit and selling it on Facebook Marketplace and seeing some early success in that. And I think that is going to blossom into something else that I'm not necessarily entirely ready to talk about yet. But yeah, I'm letting a few things simmer just because it feels like I shouldn't rush into the next thing for one reason or another. And frankly, I have the luxury of doing that, which is nice. So I'm going to take advantage of that. So I don't know what's next. Something is next. I can tell you that because if you know me, I don't sit around and do nothing very well. There's always something to be done. But it's just a matter of picking which path, or if I can pick multiple paths at once, I'll also do that. So that'll be coming soon. But like I said, the big news is just the crickets are done. But if you're on my email list and you want to get your hands on some of the last ones, that will be coming very shortly. And I will have some merch that I'll do at a discount as well, more than likely. So all of that stuff, you can still grab a piece of Jiminy Cricket's history if you so desire. The other thing I suppose that I should talk about is we hosted our 4th deadlift competition here at Collins Days. 4th annual Collins Days deadlift competition was last weekend, and we had 66 lifters signed up. We only had 52 show up, which was fine. It rained in the morning. It always rains on Collins Days. It can be beautiful. It can be a drought. It can be whatever, for weeks and weeks and months before Collins Days. It doesn't matter. We are guaranteed to have rain on Collins Days. Not necessarily the entire day, but a portion of it will always rain. Thankfully for us, I think it rained until about 9:30. And then things really kicked off. The parade starts at 10 and 10:30. Our registration starts at 10 and our lifting doesn't start until 1. So we had some time for it to stop raining for us. And thankfully it did. But so we had 52 lifters show up. We didn't have any walk-ups this year, which was great because last year we had 35 walk-ups and it was really overwhelming and it made the rest of the day like super not fun for me. So this year everybody was pre-registered, which I love. We had age range from 10 years old up to 63 years old. We had a couple guys pull in the 700s again. We had one girl in the 400s. We had lots of PRs. We had one guy lift 3.3 times his body weight, which was insane. I'm pretty sure he was 199 pounds and he lifted 660 pounds, I think. I'd have to look it up off the top of my head. 660 sounds right. But so he lifted 660 pounds at 199 pounds. That is wild. So he won the men's open. He was also late, like very late, but I forgave him after he lifted as much weight as he did. Overall though, this year, we had 57 lifters last year. And so 52 this year. So it was a little bit less, but it was so much smoother. We were so much more organized, on our side. And that's the 2 weeks leading up to it. That was basically my main focus. Everything else had to take a back burner because I had to get everything put together to pull an event like that off. So we had 52 lifters, and I would say we probably had in total between lifters and spectators, it had to be somewhere around the 150 people mark. So if you ever wonder why I never wanted like a full-blown wedding, partly this is why. Like I've put on large scale events. I know what goes into it. And that doesn't sound like a good time to me. So that's partly why I didn't want to do that. But yeah, overall it was great. We still we do free pizza and drinks afterwards, after everybody's done lifting, and rewards and all of that stuff. Some things that really helped this year, like I said, the no walk-ups definitely helped. I built a digitized spreadsheet for results and all of that kind of stuff. That really helped because last year it took me 45 minutes to calculate results. And so putting together flights was a lot easier. Putting together results was a lot easier. It was just, there was so much that was learned last year that was able to apply this year. And there were lots of lessons that we learned this year. This year we ran 2 platforms for the first 2 flights, and that was its own shit show. That's its own shit show. Just trying to get all of everything, but it worked out. So we are excited for year 5. I will likely be reaching out for sponsorship for year 5. We almost broke even this year, and I was going to ask for sponsors this year, but as you heard, I had a little bit of a busy spring, and then it's been basically nonstop for the whole first half of 2024. Not that I think that the second half is going to be any different, but we packed a lot in 6 months. So the sponsorship thing just fell by the wayside. Next year. I keep saying next year. But yeah, we're happy to keep doing it. It's a lot of work that goes into it. A lot of hours of preparation, a lot of things that go on in the background to make it a great experience, but we think that we deliver a great experience that, people they keep coming back. They keep bringing friends, which is awesome, which is nice. So we'll look forward to year 5. I think we just set the official dates. It's like June 27th or something like that. I'd have to look at what we said. It is June 27th through the 29th. So I think that Saturday will be the 28th. So if you're interested in year 5, come check it out. But, so lots of, and it's one of those things, like I said, I had been meaning to record this episode for quite some time. And as people see me, or as people would ask me, hey, are you still doing crickets? I would tell them. So if you saw me in person, you already know this. But if you have been wondering where I've been on the cricket side of things, this is where I've been. And this is why I've not really been active. It is what it is. So yeah, end of an era. I've had a lot of people ask me if I'm sad, or like they think that it's some negative thing, that like I was perhaps forced out of business, like I ran out of runway or something. I've been profitable for over 3 years at this point. So no, it was not, I wasn't forced out because of that. I was not forced out, like nothing forced me out of it. I'm over it. It's time for me to move on. I learned a ton of things. I learned a lot of lessons. I learned a lot about so many things. And it opened a lot of doors. It gave me a ton of opportunities. It got me a lot of exposure. And you can't take any of those experiences away from me. And, you know, I have nothing. I'm not upset to move on at all. And looking back, I'm appreciative of what it brought me. But it's time to move on. I'm not going to miss it. I've not missed this last 6 weeks or so of not being in the barn. You know, this past week I hit it pretty hard on making crickets to get that order out the door. And man, I have not missed that either. Like 0% I've missed any of it. So it is time. It's probably a little past time for me to have been done. But I will, when I finally decide what I'm doing officially, I will let you know. Like I said, I got a few things simmering. If you need landscaping, give us a call. If you need plants, give us a call. We can do that. We are booked probably till the middle of August. So for about next 6 weeks, I'd say we're booked. But then if you're looking to do something later on in the summer, early fall, we can take care of you. Or if you know somebody who needs something, we gotcha. So yeah, like I said, it's been half an hour of me rambling. I hope that made some sort of coherent sense. It's actually really hard to talk to yourself without somebody asking you questions. And I naturally didn't bring any notes because that would make too much sense to kind of keep me on some semblance of track. So yeah, that's about all I got. I mean, that's a pretty big announcement. If you haven't seen me, immediately what's next is we're having a party for our wedding at the end of July. So got to get that all put together. It'll be fine. Have people coming from all over the world, which is cool. But so that is, again, the immediate thing. I'm not sure if I will be back with another episode next week. I might just take this week as summer break, because it just seems like a good time to take a little break. Take this week as summer break and then come back with interviews. And as always, if you have ideas for people for me to interview, shoot me an email, send me a message. Happy to take suggestions. And thank you again for, listening. It's been half a year. It's been 6 months, 26 episodes in. I'm noticing as I do this by myself, I say a lot, and I'm sorry. It's going to annoy me if I listen to this myself, but it's interesting when you host a podcast, your verbal tics that you notice or the words that you overuse. Unless you record yourself talking, you don't ever notice it. But after a while, and you hear it enough, it starts to be nails on the chalkboard, especially if it's your own. So anyway, if you aren't subscribed, please subscribe. Share the podcast with a friend. Maybe not this episode, probably not the best one. Find your favorite interview episode. Share that with a friend, somebody that you think would enjoy all the chats that I have with all the different people working with small towns, working in small towns, working on small towns. I think that there's just so much opportunity in these small towns. You just got to kind of think outside the box. So anyway, all right, I got to cut it off. I'm starting to ramble at this point. Thanks again for listening, and I will catch you next time.